Our next speaker is John Curran from ARIN to give us an ARIN update.
Okay, for some reason they put me as the last speaker between you and lunch, but I'm very pleased that no one's getting up and running for the door. I'm going to try to be brief. I'll leave some time for questions, but hopefully there'll be none, so we'll all get out early. This is the ARIN update. If you don't sit in ARIN's meetings, if you don't sit on the ARIN Discuss or public policy mailing list, this is a good time to come up to speed really quick. So, a couple of things we've been doing. 4-byte ASN stats. People know we're running out of 2-byte ASNs. We've issued, per the IETF standards, 4-byte ASNs. Since 2007, we've had 426 requests for 4-byte ASNs. 366 of them have changed to 2-byte ASN requests in the process of the application. As they go and find out how they're going to use this and begin talking to their upstream providers, they come back and say, hey, you know what, we actually can't use the 4 bytes. We really need to use the 2-byte ones because our providers upstream don't know how to handle 4-byte ASNs. This is a market failure. I mean, this is a case where we're going to, at this rate, run out of 2-byte ASNs at some point, and people will get stuck using 4. If you're an ISP and you do not support 4-byte ASNs, you're not helping this situation. It's not, this one's not that hard. This one actually does have some transparency. There is a way of mapping 2 and 4. So to the extent that you're not currently supporting 4-byte ASNs, I'd ask that you please look into it, because these aren't being requested by the community. In fact, we have cases where the requests come in and they get exchanged after the fact because they can't use them. So this is an important discussion. Again, if people think that this isn't important and we shouldn't be encouraging the community, let me know. But as it is, we don't see any traction or any growth in people supporting the 4-byte ASNs. Whois traffic. I just want to point this out. This is the Whois traffic on ARIN's Whois servers. It is true we actually deployed a lot of infrastructure in 2009, and as we did, the query rate went up, so that means we were probably rate throttled before then. There is some queries on this that are self-referential. I talked about that earlier. Someone doing a Whois query and the source address is the address of the Whois query is the address they're doing the Whois from. That's about half of this traffic, and it's maybe tapering off. We still don't know what that is. We're still looking at it, talking to people. But it is true that we're seeing a lot of Whois traffic. People are using this in their automation. They're using this in their spam work. They're using it in their tools. So we're moving to a more efficient infrastructure. We've changed the back end at ARIN. Part of the automation work going on is to rebuild how we do Whois and make a full actual service interface. We are replacing the existing Whois service on June 26th. This is a major upgrade. This new one is a system architected for high performance. It's more efficient. It actually matches the current documentation better than the current server does. The fact of the matter is it's a Whois RESTful state query service. Now, obviously, we can't roll this out and not support the old Whois protocol on port 43. So there's a legacy support on port 43. There are some minor changes because that legacy support is a client that goes back and uses the new back end. We've sent announcements out for this. In general, it's order of fields coming out and comments. People should realize that if you're doing screen scraping of Whois sessions on port 43, now that we have RESTful Whois, that's the protocol we'd prefer you to do queries. It's kind of the way the web right now is doing service transaction queries. So it'd be a good time to update your interfaces and make use of the RESTful language. We can go online. We have announcements on the ARIN Announce page. We have information online at www.arin.net. Just want to let people know. We'll maintain, of course, the legacy support on port 43, but we highly advise people to move to a programmatic interface as opposed to doing the screen scraping now that we've offered one. Public-facing development efforts, ARIN Online, obviously, that's how you log in and manage your resources. We're currently at ARIN Online Release 3.0. There's actually a roadmap online of the features that we're rolling out bit by bit, automatic organization changes, POC changes. We'll be handling requests soon. So to the extent that people are paying attention to what's going on at ARIN, this is a good way to do your management. Makes it a lot easier than trying to send in email templates. Transfer listing service. There is a specified transfer policy or a specified recipient transfer policy that was adopted that basically says if you have IPv4 address space and there's a party that wishes to have that address space, you can designate it be transferred to them. In order to make that service work a little better, that policy, we're supporting an online listing service where parties who have address space that could be made available with some renumbering to be able to list that, and that parties that want address space. Now, obviously, right now, if you want address space, it's kind of weird. You have to go prove to ARIN that you're qualified. You document your need, and we have address space. So if you actually prove your need, we're going to give it to you. But at some point in the future, we may not have it, and that's when we expect people to be listed in the service for wanting address space. This will set up a mechanism so that address space that's been abandoned, sort of. What I mean abandoned is there's a contact, it's out there, but it's not necessarily being heavily used, or someone's using it inefficiently. In order to get them off, they may need to renumber or do some work. This allows someone who has a better need to provide an incentive and get that address space moved to a better use. It's what the community asked us to do. The transfer listing service lets people find parties that have these address blocks or find parties that need them. Who is RWS? We just talked about. DNSSEC. I think we all know what DNSSEC is. I won't go into it. We are taking the zones that we serve, which is the zones below inatter.APA for each of the /8s that ARIN's responsible for, and we are signing those zones. We're going to give you the ability to put the delegated signer records in that you need by going into ARIN Online with an interface later this year. So you can support a signed zone for your particular part of your address space. And that'll be coming out in the fourth quarter of this year. I want to note one little thing. Inatter.APA is not presently signed. Inatter.APA is generated by ARIN right now on behalf of all the RIRs. And we generate that and we ship it off, and it ends up in the root zone servers. There is a change coming up later this year where we'll actually be working with the IANA folks over at ICANN to have them generate inatter.APA. It's sort of a central function that's appropriate for them to do. And as part of that, they'll also work on getting the inatter.APA signed. When they're done generating it, it'll be served not by the root servers, which have plenty to do and don't need the workload. It'll actually be served by a group of name servers for inatter.APA run by each of the RIRs. So there will be a change coming up to inatter.APA DNS service. Expect information later on this summer. RPKI, I think everyone knows what that is, but it's the resource, our RPKI effort is the ability to do digital certificates representing resource assignments, which would allow you then to actually sign your route announcements, for example. There's an online trial. People who want to participate should go online and get involved. We have comments from the community that say they want this, but we don't have a lot of participants. So if you want to get involved, there's very good information online. There's also good public libraries out there that you can use. We'd like more users of this. Right now we're being guided by a very small community out there. Outreach. ARIN is doing a lot of outreach. We are doing literally dozens of presentations each quarter to the community, including public forums, including events like CES and Interop, and then moving out into more traditional media, talking about IPv4 depletion, talking about the need to adopt IPv6. You can actually follow us. If you go to www.teamarin.net, you can see all the outreach we're doing. We want to make sure we got 600 people here, but as someone noted earlier, there's probably some 35,000 autonomous systems that are impacted by the change, the need to start doing V6. They don't come to ARIN. They don't come to NANOG. They may only barely know that this change affects them and that they need to get involved in V6. So you can go online. You can see the presentations we're doing. You can also see the outreach where we've actually been. There's a public presentation that you can use. It's the IPv4, IPv6 presentation that includes the graph showing how we're slowly running out of V4, talks about V6 deployment. That's a public slide deck for you to take and give at your meetings, your customers, your executive team. So if you need supporting materials to go educate someone on V6, you can go get them on the website. Policies, I just want to talk. We've had a couple of policies that have been adopted that are pending implementation now. Initial IPv6 allocation criteria was rewritten fairly extensively. One interesting implication is if you're multi-homed or imminently multi-homed today, that is a valid qualification for V6 space, and you'll get a /32. That's an important change for people to see. M&A transfer policy. M&As, we actually, when we did the specified recipient policy, we created ambiguity on whether or not, if Party A buys Party B, is the address space coming through the merger and acquisition policy, or is the address space transferring through specified recipient? And we clarified that with the M&A transfer policy. One side effect of that is when Party A acquires Party B, including all the resources and the computing, Party B is moving the number resources as part of that. The excess resources are to be returned. If there's other resources that aren't needed, so if you've got number resources, you've got a /16, your network's only using 30% of it. Under the old M&A transfer policy, that 16 would transfer to the acquirer. Under the new M&A transfer policy, that 16 wouldn't transfer, only the portion necessary to support the network would. If you're actually moving the entire block, yes, it comes under the specified recipient policy. It's actually just as easy to use. It's just recognize we're trying to make sure that we don't have ambiguous overlapping policies. Policy discussions underway. We have a couple of them underway. Waiting lists for unmet IPv4 requests are interesting. In the next 2 years, we'll have a situation where someone will come in, ask for address space, be qualified, and there will not be a block available for them. And in fact, we'll probably have several hundred people in that circumstance, and we have to decide how to put them in a list, what to do when an address block is made available because someone returns it or it comes in under transfer or amnesty, and who to give it to. And do we break it up? Do we give each person a portion of the request? Do we create queues for various sizes? That's the whole discussion on waiting lists. This is an active discussion in ARIN. IPv6 assignment criteria, we actually just talked about that one. IPv4 minimum assignment to /24. There's a discussion to lower the minimum assignment size to /24 so that organizations, that ISPs that want to come in and become an ISP can get a /24. They would need to renumber when they actually end up going multi-homed or end up being directly connected. Abandoned. A couple of policies that did not pass that folks should know about. Customer confidentiality was a policy proposal to allow people to omit information in who is and instead sort of provide a contact the ISP. That was actually withdrawn. Minimum allocation policy to /23 was withdrawn. And standard IP allocation sizes of a policy to create effectively a whole category of classes for IPv6, sort of class A, B, C, E, F. Was discussed and also abandoned. We have 6 policy proposals that are in front of the Advisory Council right now, waiting to be worked on. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're written up here. If you go out to the ARIN Help Desk, you'll find there's a little handout out here that summarizes them as well. You can go get that on the ARIN desk. You can participate in the discussion online. You can send comments into the public policy mailing list. You can also, when we have our meetings, you can also do remote participation. A couple of other things. NRO-NC voting changes for NANOG meeting attendees. This is a little weird. In October, when we do our joint meeting with NANOG, there's been confusion about how the voting works for the NRO number council. This is the individuals from this region who sit on the NRO number council. They serve as the ASO, the Address Supporting Organization, AC. They serve as a part of ICANN. We have clarified this. It used to be you had a very narrow window. There was only one day at NANOG you could vote. We're actually going to allow you now to vote online throughout the entire period from the end of September through October. And you will have to be registered, however, for NANOG in order to vote online. So in order to vote, you have to make the deadline. So if you're going to be voting for this, you need to be registered for NANOG a week before the meeting. Something to think about. This is not tied to ARIN. We run this because it's for the region, but anyone can vote on who goes on the number council. The number council is mostly designed with making sure that address policies from all the RIRs are consistent before they're adopted as a global policy. ARIN meetings, we have two. We have our joint meeting with NANOG coming up. That'll be in Atlanta the first week of October. And then we've announced that our spring meeting the following year, we're going back to San Juan, Puerto Rico. So that will be our April meeting. We welcome people to participate, again, on-site or remote. If you want more information on our policies, they're online, ARIN.net, policy, proposals, you get the index. And our mailing lists are online. Certainly, if you are affected by these ARIN policies, it's probably a good idea to pay attention to some of the mailing lists so they don't take you by surprise. That's it. Thank you very much. I have a couple of minutes for questions, I guess. Yes, the gentleman in the back. Yes. Well, Randy, just for sake of avoiding ambiguity.
Randy Bush, IIJ. You East Coast boys sure do talk fast.
Thank you.
And it's nice to see full employment for policy weenies. The mass of them's really impressive. Will there, how many years after IPv4 runs out will you stop worrying about IPv4 policies? But
Good question.
I do have a technical question, which is the RPKI, of course, which I have a little disease about, which you're fielding finally, the deployment at the end of the year. The RPKI specs in the ITF have this little thing known as the up-down protocol. Mm-hmm. That coming out the first of the year?
The up-down protocol is not in the initial release. The up-down
so
protocol.
So it's kind of the RPK you're releasing.
Yeah, it's going to be RPK with the K being in the RIRs. RPKI, where the I is the infrastructures in your infrastructure, is first quarter next year. Okay, but definitely known to be on the roadmap. Randy brings up another good question, though, which is ARIN will continue to make policies, as the community does, for IPv4 address space. And this community is affected by those. And at some point, if you want ARIN not to have new IPv4 policies or slow down the rate of them or pick up the rate of them to handle this last year and a half until we run out, this is a great thing to bring forth to the ARIN meeting. Again, these policies are being made and they will affect you and your routing table in the next few years as we go to depletion. Any other questions? Lunch is right past me. Okay, thank you very much.